Thank you, Bobby. Thank you, Scott. Congrats, Nikki. Welcome to Club 99. Our new member streak continues. 28 consecutive meetings. Let's keep it going, y'all. Congrats. Last week, we introduced Beck Dwyer Coop virtually. Is she here today? Right here. All right, will you stand up so we can acknowledge you in person? Thank you. All right. Next, President-elect nominee Jason Chaco will provide a literacy lab update. Jason?
I apologize for sitting in the back of the room. Didn't realize I was talking today, but I'm excited to be here and talk about the literacy lab that we've been working on for the last couple weeks. Obviously, the ice storm limited us a little bit on what we could do last week, but I'm just here to give a testimonial about the kids that I was able to work with. London is a wonderful little girl over at Stevens Elementary that I've been fortunate to do some reading with. So the literacy lab is Tuesdays and Thursdays, is 3 p.m. to 4 p.m., very short time that we spend over there, and we just sit and read. It was an amazing experience because getting one-on-one attention or two-on-one attention is not something that the kids have access to all the time. So we sat there and read. I know she is a third grader. She had trouble reading more than 60 words while we were sitting together, so reading is not one of her strengths yet. But it was such a great program to be able to join her, help her sound out a couple words, and watch her confidence grow as she started to read more and recognize more. The patience that didn't cost me a whole lot of time really looks like it's something to look forward to every week now. So would recommend anybody that can spare an hour or two a week. It is a great program to be a part of. That's all I got.
Thank you, Jason. Also, special thanks to Dunbar Committee Chair Dan Parker, who recently presented the Rotary Club of Little Rock Citizenship Award Trophy to worthy students at Dunbar Middle School. Thank you, Dan. The club also gave gift certificates to each winner and every student on the All A's Honor Roll at Dunbar. So glad to be a part of that ongoing tradition of partnering with Dunbar. This past Sunday, we noticed a few Club 99ers featured in the news, starting with our own Dr. Jamal Wright. He doesn't want me to do this, but here it is. Congrats. Carrie McCoy's Dreamland Ballroom and the Junior League of Little Rock Centennial Celebration with Ellen Cockrell and others. I think Molly was in there. They were highlighted in the section. And if you dug a little bit deeper, you may have seen our friend Tanya James and her husband Terrence, a story about their love story. So if y'all see Tanya, give her a warm greeting. Congrats to all of you. We appreciate all of you do for our community, all of you in Club 99. And then, sadly, late last week, we learned of the tragic death of Malin Opitz, daughter of Patty and Club 99er Jonathan Opitz. She was diagnosed with an inoperable brain tumor back in June. She was a beloved student at Jefferson Elementary, and as a tribute to her and her love of reading, Club 99 will donate $500 in her name for books for her school's library. And if anyone else would like to join us in matching that or being a part of that contribution, please let Karen or me know. But we do want to do something really special for Malin, and her dad, Jonathan, said that she would have loved that. So appreciate Jonathan and his family. And now for a few announcements. Tomorrow is the deadline to send us your nomination for our Arkansas Business and Professional Leader of the Year Award. We should have enough for a bus to Oaklawn now for Day at the Races on March 3rd, so be on the lookout for RSVPing for that. Please make a note of our Arkansas Travelers Opening Night Social on Tuesday, April the 11th at Dickey Stevens. We won't have a noon meeting that day, so please make a note of that. And on Tuesday, May 23rd, we will celebrate the 75th anniversary of the Ottenheimer International Scholars Program with an evening reception in the brand new Arkansas Museum of Fine Arts building. please mark the date. Again, no noon meeting on May 23rd. And for those of you on the committee that want to help with that, and anyone who wants to join that committee, for any new members, we will be meeting immediately after here in this room for the Ottenheimer Committee. Next week, please join us for an insider's look at Northeast Arkansas's growing, booming steel industry and its impact on Mississippi County. We'll hear from economic development leaders and officials from the area, along with Central Arkansas's own Lexicon President and CEO, Patrick Schick. During our La Petite Rose Tricentennial, I will spend my year as president telling unique stories about our region's past 300 years. As we kick off Black History Month with the release of Forward's State of Education in Arkansas report, I'd like to share some highlights of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s 2 journeys through the natural state, with props to the Only in Arkansas blog. In 1958, as Dr. King began gaining traction as a chief voice in the civil rights movement, officials at Arkansas A&M College, now UAPB, invited him to be its commencement speaker. He would receive a standing ovation for saying, quote, "Through the use of nonviolence, understanding, and goodwill, we will achieve desegregation and integration. We will come together spiritually because men will see that it is right and natural. We believe that we are on God's side and that God is with us. Go home determined to revolt against segregation and discrimination everywhere." A member of that graduating class and now a former chancellor at UAPB, Lawrence A. Davis Jr., said about his father, who was president at the time, that he had received severe backlash for inviting Dr. King. His son recalls his dad saying about legislators telling him, "You double-crossed us." And the next year, they cut the school's funding. But today, many years later, UAPB still proudly remains the only institution in Arkansas where Dr. King spoke. Following the commencement, Dr. King made his way to Little Rock to the graduation ceremony of Ernest Green from Little Rock Central. Green first made history as one of the 9 Black students to integrate Central, and as the lone senior among the Little Rock 9, he made history a second time on May 27th, 1958, 65 years ago this year, as the first African American to graduate from the school. Dr. King attended the graduation as a guest of Green's family and shook the hand of an elated Ernest Green following the ceremony. He even gifted Green a $15 check, what would be the equivalent of about $155 in today's dollars. The now 81-year-old Green revels in being one of the only people in the world to have Dr. King attend their graduation and marks it as an iconic event in his life. For Dr. King, this was a rare moment where he was able to witness firsthand the impact and progress our country had made, largely due to his advocacy efforts and others like him. And in 1963, Dr. King would come back to Arkansas to preach at the First Missionary Baptist Church, home to one of the oldest Black congregations in the state. Founded in 1845 by then slave Wilson Brown, 15 years before the Civil War. Located just a few blocks from historic 9th Street in downtown Little Rock, the building has been on the National Register of Historic Places for 40 years. The podium and the Bible Dr. King used are still on display in this historic church sanctuary. And whatever came of that $15 check Dr. King gave Ernest Green, Green once told a radio station, "I get asked all the time if I cash the check." As a 16-year-old with graduation presents, that was a check I wasn't going to save. I cashed it right away. I'm sure we would have all done the same. And that's our Illuminating the Rock story for this week. And now, thank you. And now I'd like for Courtney Lincoln to introduce today's special education program, the next in our quarterly panel series on topics impacting our community. Courtney?
Thank you, Denver, and thank you all for being here today. As a new Rotarian and a member of the Forward Arkansas team, I am excited and proud to introduce today's program on the state of education in Arkansas. I think many of us here today would agree that the current state of education in our state is one of the most important issues facing our state and all Arkansans. It is also one that will require the attention of us all to make progress. Before we get started, I would like to recognize and thank our partners who are here today. Without their support, this effort and the work of Forward would not be possible. So if you all wouldn't mind just waving your hand and showing who you are. Thank you very much. Today we're going to hear from Ben Cotillo, the Executive Director of Forward Arkansas, to provide an overview of the report, followed by a panel discussion. Ben joined Forward Arkansas as Executive Director in July of 2020. Ben leads Forward's work to develop and support innovative solutions to improve outcomes for all Arkansas students. After his presentation, he'll be joined for a panel discussion by Dr. Sharice West Scantleberry and Dr. Sarah Moore, moderated by Craig O'Neill. Dr. Sarah Moore is the Vice Chair of the Arkansas State Board of Education. She is a resident of Stuttgart and also a parent and former educator. Dr. Sharice West Scantleberry is President and CEO of the Winthrop Rockefeller Foundation. She is a leading equity advocate in the state and has spent more than 30 years of experience in philanthropy, community development, public policy, and advocacy, and public service. Craig O'Neill probably needs no introduction here, but most know him in the state for his broadcasting skills, but he is also an advocate for education and is passionate about literacy and infusing the joy of reading in students across the state. So thank you all again for being here, and I'll turn it over to Ben to get started.
Well, first, thanks to Courtney, and actually thanks to the entire Forward Arkansas team. I'm lucky to have an amazing team, and any of the work we do would not be possible without them, and certainly the work on this process. So thank you. First, I want to thank all of you for having me here today. I'm really excited to be here, and I appreciate it. I'm personally and professionally very eager to share the findings of this report with you today. And I want to start by telling you a little bit about why. My family moved to Arkansas just about 3 years ago, and we moved here for actually a career opportunity for my wife. And so we moved here not having spent a lot of time in Arkansas, not really knowing what to expect, but we loved it. And Arkansas quickly became home for us, and I have a 5-year-old daughter who's in kindergarten, and we're raising her here. So I started to dig in to Arkansas education, develop a better understanding of education in the state, and two things became immediately clear to me. So one, there's an urgent need, as we know, to dramatically improve outcomes for all Arkansas students, and also to rethink how we're approaching change in education in the state. And then the second thing is I also saw and see a tremendous opportunity. More than any other place where I've worked and where I've done this work, Chicago, Massachusetts, Colorado, I believe that the conditions and the foundation exists here to dramatically transform education in the state. And it's for those two reasons, the urgent need and this opportunity, that I took the job as Executive Director of Forward Arkansas 2.5 years ago. And really, I've devoted my life, my professional life, to improving Arkansas education. So I'm excited about the release of this report today because I think through the voices of thousands of Arkansans, we show, or this report shows, the need that we have in the state, and it elevates the urgency to act, but it also shows the opportunity we have. And I hope this report also provides some direction for the state moving forward in how we do better for all kids. For those of you that may not know Forward Arkansas, we're a nonprofit organization that was co-founded in 2015 by the Winthrop Rockefeller Foundation and the Walton Family Foundation. And those two organizations came together to create Forward to be a nonpartisan, student-centered, strategic partner for the state. And very simply, our mission is to ensure that every Arkansas student has access to and is prepared for opportunities in career and in life. So it's been 8 years since the last time Forward and our partners launched a State of Education report in Arkansas. And in that amount of time, the landscape has changed significantly, as we know. We also know that we experienced and are really still feeling the effects of this unprecedented global pandemic that disrupted nearly every aspect of education across the country, but in Arkansas as well. So as we began to emerge from the height of the COVID pandemic, Forward, our partners, our board, believed it was both a critical and opportune time to reassess the state of education in the state and establish a shared understanding of where we are now and how we can best move forward from here to accelerate progress. And so last June, Forward launched the State of Education in Arkansas 2023. So here's what we did. To conduct this project, we gathered and analyzed current education and economic data. We reviewed national research, and we reviewed case studies from across the country, as well as case studies and examples from within Arkansas. And I think most importantly, we gathered input from 3,500 Arkansans, and that's students, parents, community members, educators, state leaders, business leaders, everyone we could talk to. We did that through conversations, surveys, focus groups, but also for months, our team and our partners traveled the state, and we held in-person community meetings really in every part of Arkansas. And you can see on the map there, that shows the locations of every location of where we held meetings across the state. But I want to be clear, though Forward conducted this process and we authored this report, it's not Forward's report. This is the report for the state. It's a report from Arkansans. And so every finding, every priority, every recommendation in there are based on data, research, and really input from thousands of Arkansans. So over the next few slides, I'm going to present what emerged from this process. And what I'll share today will be at a fairly high level. But the report itself is meant to be a strategic resource. So it includes additional data, additional context, and also specific actionable recommendations for stakeholders at all levels that can help inform the plan for the next 5 years. So I encourage you to dig into it. You all have copies at your table. It will be everywhere. So please do dig into it. But first, I'm going to share the 3 primary findings that review the last 8 years of Arkansas education and highlight kind of where we are today. So first, before COVID, again, I don't think this will come as a surprise, but student outcomes were severely lagging before the pandemic. And on average, just 41% in 2018-19, just 41% of Arkansas third graders were reading proficiently. Just 48% were proficient in math. Also, we know there were and are and continue to be significant and persistent achievement gaps for certain student groups, African American students, Latino students, economically disadvantaged students. And there are also significant gaps in certain regions of the state, particularly southern and eastern Arkansas. So then, that was before COVID. Then as we know, the COVID pandemic began in 2020. Simply put, because of the disruptions due to the pandemic, academic outcomes worsened. So you see here in 2019-20, there was a sharp decline. So just 36% of students were proficient in reading, 36% proficient in math, third graders. We rebounded slightly, but still where we are today, the most recent data in 2021-22 shows that 38% of third graders are proficient in reading, just 34% are proficient in math. So almost 2/3 of our students in the state, of our third graders, aren't proficient in these core subjects. We also found that students largely are leaving K-12 education unprepared for college and career opportunities. Arkansas students are graduating at high levels, but they're doing so without the skills that they need to be successful after high school. So in 2018-19, 88% of Arkansas seniors graduated, but only 27% of those same students were proficient in reading in the 8th grade. So this graphic is meant to illustrate that. So you see 10 Arkansas students there. So of those 10, 9 graduate, but of those 9 that graduate, only 3 were proficient in reading in the 8th grade. So, I think what's clear is that student outcomes haven't moved, they haven't improved, and we're far from where we need to be and want to be as a state. But since 2015, we also found the state has made foundational progress in key areas and on critical issues for students that we can build on moving forward. And so we've highlighted 3 of those areas here, and the state's made big commitments really to literacy, acknowledging that the need to dramatically improve in literacy, and committing to a strategy through the science of reading and launching the RISE initiative across the state. The state has also expanded the perception and access to high-quality, industry-aligned career and technical education programs. We have a long way to go there, but progress has been made. And then finally, the state has created multiple accessible, affordable, and high-quality pathways to enter the teaching profession. We need more teachers, especially in the highest need regions of the state. And these programs are designed to do that, especially in those regions. So that's where we are. And now where do we go from here? So we asked, over the last 8 months, we asked thousands of Arkansans really one primary question. What do students, kids, future employees need to learn in school to be prepared for high-demand jobs and have opportunities to live healthy, productive lives? Largely, regardless of who we were talking to, regardless of where they lived, they agreed. And Arkansans consistently said the same things. And so 8 priorities emerged from this process to dramatically improve education for the next 5 years. And I'm going to talk a little bit about those. And we separated them into 2 distinct but related areas, and they're represented by this graphic, which I'll talk about as well. So the first 4 are what we call student learning priorities. So they're the leaves of this tree. They're the most critical and highest impact learning needs for every student as they move through pre-K to 12 education. So students first need access to high quality early learning experiences so that they're ready for kindergarten. As they enter K-12, students need high quality literacy instruction so that they learn to read and then can read to learn. That opens the door to all other opportunities. And we know that 3rd grade literacy is one of the strongest predictors of later life outcomes. The third is what we're calling durable skills. So these are skills like communication, collaboration, critical thinking. We know these are essential in today's world. If you look at any resume today, you see these skills on that resume. They need to be embedded in instruction, in the learning experience that students have in school, starting at an early age. And then the 4th is career pathways. As students transition into adulthood, every student needs early exposure and experience to well-charted, diverse career opportunities as they move from middle school and high school into college and career. So the second four priorities are the roots of this tree, and what we're calling the essential conditions for student success. So these conditions must exist in every school and every community to set every student up for success through their education journey. The first is student health and well-being. As we all know, many students come to school with significant needs based on factors outside of school. And the COVID pandemic shed a lot of light on this. But to learn, students have to feel safe in their schools, and they have to be physically and mentally healthy. So this is something we have to address. The second condition is great teachers and leaders. Research is clear that teachers are the single biggest determinant of student learning in schools. And school leaders hire teachers, they set the school culture, they create the school environment, and they enable great teaching and learning. So every student in the state needs access to great teachers and leaders. Third, we have to meet the unique needs of small and rural districts and communities across the state. Over 50% or nearly half of Arkansans live in small rural communities. They're going to need, and we will need to support them with creative solutions to effectively utilize the local resources that they have that recognize both the unique strengths in those communities, but also the unique constraints that they have based on their size and their location. And then the final condition is community investment. Schools cannot address all of the needs that students have alone, and really they shouldn't be responsible for doing so alone. In every community, students are the future leaders, community members, employees, and local partners, businesses have to engage and invest in their schools as drivers of economic growth and drivers of community strength and health. And we have some shining examples of this happening in the state of Arkansas, which are highlighted in the report too. So in the last few slides, we identified or highlighted kind of the what emerged from this process and from what we heard from Arkansans. But in many ways, though, identifying what the most important priorities are, that's the easier task. And actually in Arkansas, we've focused on many of these areas for quite some time. So really, it will be how we move forward as a state that will determine the progress that we make for students. No one entity or stakeholder group or individual can do it single-handedly. It's all of our responsibility, and everyone in the state has a role to play. And improving outcomes for students, we believe and know that it's absolutely possible, but it's going to take significant work. It's going to take a commitment to continuous improvement. It's going to take hard decisions. It's going to take true engagement and collaboration from all of us. So in closing, we outline 5 guiding next steps for the state, for all stakeholders, as we determine how we approach change differently over the next 5 years to achieve dramatically different results. So first, set focused, ambitious, and measurable statewide goals to drive all the work we do, all the decisions we make in education at every level. Second, we need to continue to enhance our data and the systems that we use to capture and share it. We need to use that data continuously to identify needs, assess the impact of the efforts that we're making, and then evaluate and adjust. Third, we need to focus on integration. And this is at all levels as well. We need to ensure that initiatives, programs, priorities aren't siloed. They're not seen as independent because they aren't. They need to be part of a coherent strategy, both at the state level and in schools and communities. We need to use the existing resources that we have more effectively and creatively to ensure that the majority of those resources at all levels are focused on the most important needs to produce better outcomes for every student. And then finally, we need to facilitate community-led change. Communities, schools, educators locally, they know their students best. They know their community's needs best. And that is where change happens. So the state, of course, we have to set overall goals, priorities, and policies, But within those guidelines, communities have to be empowered to create and own the vision for their schools and their students, and then determine how to reach it. Only then will there be ownership locally that leads to great implementation, leads to different results. So I want to thank you all again for having me. We really appreciate your support, and also Arkansas is going to need all of you moving forward, and your continued engagement and voice in this work. And at Forward, we're excited to work with you all. So now we're going to move to, we're going to continue the conversation with the rest of the panelists. So if you want to come on up, we will continue.
Look for your name. Look for your name in the chair. Look for your name in the chair. Hello. Oh, there we are. We're all on. Please forgive the informal dress because today I was reading to schools. I went to Bryant to read to Hurricane Creek Elementary. The book, The True Story Behind the Three Little Pigs. If you want to know the true story, watch THV 11 News tonight. This is a true story, Sharice. We'll start with you. Why did the Rockefeller Foundation write the check for this Arkansas study, The Voice of Arkansans?
Sure. Good afternoon, and thank you for having us. So for the foundation, it is important that the state of Arkansas has quality education, quality data. Well, it is important to have quality education, but quality data from which to have public discourse, strategy, and plans. And so supporting Forward, along with the Walton Family Foundation, supporting Forward to do the state of Arkansas 8 years later, it's just important to know what has happened since COVID, because COVID was a disruption from the past 8 years, and how severe was COVID on our students. But from that, what we learn and see in this report is while COVID created a dip in the math and reading scores and ACT scores, we weren't doing so well even pre-COVID. And so while this data is not news or new, because most of what we talked about here, we pretty much already know, but it is affirmation of what needs to be done and where we need to direct our resources.
And Sarah, you're on the State Board of Education. You're a mom. You got kids in school. I got to know your reaction to what you have witnessed and read in this.
Absolutely. I'm glad to be here today as we share. I think all of us in this room, whether you're a parent, grandparent, aunt, uncle, know that there's urgency for your student. By the time a kid reaches 8, if they're not on grade level reading, for some, unfortunately, it's too late. So I think we see from this report, we need to understand where we are, and we need to get behind that urgency to figure out what needs to be done. When we talk about early childhood, we know that the most important quality of an early childhood center is that it's teacher-student interaction, the conversations that we have. And every teacher wants that, every parent wants that, but are we designing a system where teachers have the capacity to do that? And unfortunately, there's a lot that's broken. And so as we dig in to see what's broken and where do we need to go from there.
Oh, when that connection is made and that light comes on, that is magic in a schoolroom and magic in most every Rotarian's lives. There isn't a person in here who doesn't know a teacher that didn't turn on that light, that turned on that light for you. We've all got them, and sometimes it's several teachers. Ben, I got to know, we talk about recommendations and opportunities coming out of this wonderful document. What's the immediate opportunity for all of us?
Yeah, well, I think the biggest opportunity, so we were faced with this pandemic, and it not only disrupted every aspect of education, but it also forced all of us to re-examine what we're doing in education, right? And so as we traveled around the state and talked with folks, it also shed new light on the needs students have and the needs communities have. And we saw this in conversations throughout the state. When we had those conversations, I think it also created an urgency, but also an openness, eagerness to address these things and to do better for their kids and for kids in the state. So there's a new openness there. And then the opportunity really is, again, as we share in this report, Arkansans largely agree on what needs to happen and what they want for students. So we have this collective energy and momentum and agreement on what needs to happen. And so the opportunity is to harness that and move forward differently as a state, again, to achieve different, better results.
And Therese, that's the big difference. This is an Arkansas voice, the voices of Arkansans. Wouldn't you say that's the biggest difference between what we see today and what you did earlier, 8 years ago?
So 8 years ago, that study was also informed by Arkansans. Yeah, this is repeating that study, which again talks about the quality of the data, because we were able to see at a point in time in 2015, and now we see at another point in time in 2013. And again, not many of the recommendations from then till today are that different. There have been, in some areas, improvements, modest improvements, but not significant enough to actually produce the kind of education outcomes we hope to see in the state of Arkansas.
Recommendations and opportunities, that's what this panel discussion is all about. But I gotta know, and I'm gonna throw it out to anybody who wants to, and all of us respond. If this room was legislators and Governor Sanders was, sorry to say Huckabee, Governor Sanders was here, she's made our education her top priority, what would you tell them based on what we now have? What would you say to them, to the lawmakers?
I'll go.
I'll be Sarah Huckabee Sanders.
Okay, well, so what I would say, and what I hope for is that let's continue to maintain focus on what emerged from this report and what Arkansans say are the most important needs for their students. So let's maintain and focus the majority of our efforts, energy, and investment on these core needs that Arkansans have identified and that we know are critical for student outcomes. I would also say, it's as we will have to move forward differently. So there will need to be a willingness to make some hard decisions as we move forward as a state. And then the last thing I would say is, to legislators, to state leaders, you don't have to do it alone. Forward Arkansas is here. There are organizations, partners throughout the state communities. They're eager and ready to do this work too. And so, we're ready to support and do that collaboratively with legislators and state leaders.
Will this be shown to lawmakers?
Yeah, they should all have a copy of it right now.
Now, Sarah Huckabee Sanders' initiative is called Arkansas Learns. How do you see this interacting with Arkansas Learns? Or do you see that in the future at all?
Well, I can respond, but you're with the board and you're heading forward, so I would defer to you to respond first, and then I can tell you what I think she should do.
So I think we are, yes, we hope that first we're encouraged, we've seen at a high level the Arkansas Learns plan. And I think we are encouraged because a lot of what's in that, there's a lot of alignment on certain key areas like literacy, on career, on early childhood, between that plan and what's in this report and what Arkansans said. So, we're encouraged by that and ready to work on that. And we hope that this document and our work can help inform, the work that they're going to do on those areas as well.
I would say, I'm going to take the opportunity to answer your first question. Looking at this report, looking at the Learns plan, we all agree that the teacher is the most important in a student's life in the school setting. Second to that, this report quotes, the most effective principles lead to increases in student achievement equivalent to 3 months of increased instruction. So what are we doing to support teachers and principals in their job, whether that be the development they need, the support, the resources, and the salaries? So I think we can all agree that those are things we need to double down on as we move forward.
And I would say the current education system works perfectly in its goal to produce workers, and mainly low-wage workers. If the state wants a different future, it needs to adopt our data and recommendations and actually work to change, not tinker, not tweak, but work to change the current education system to produce the outcomes we say we want it to produce. If we want to continue to produce low-wage workers, then that's what the system does, and it's working perfectly. But if we want a state that moves us into the 21st century, into the relevant fields that would make Arkansas a world-class state, the system has to change the way it is currently functioning.
It's impossible to listen to you and not want to get out here and go do something. And that brings me to this. We're kind of preaching to the choir. There isn't a person in here who hasn't had these thoughts and addressed these issues personally or maybe on a school-wide basis. What do you suggest to Rotarians, to every individual in here, as to something they could start doing, the opportunity or the recommendation for them right now?
As a collective body of business leaders, you all have so much voice and influence over what happens at the state legislature generally, but definitely around education. Again, if we want the system to do something differently, setting goals and programming all of our resources, energy, and the like towards making those goals happen would be a very good start. And pushing the state to do so is definitely something we can do and talk about collectively here at Rotary. The other is the governor has your ear because you all are the ones who hire what comes out of the system, right? And we all need everybody to at the least read and be able to add and subtract, right? Like that's the least you can do. The most you can do is make sure that I have critical thinking and writing skills and the like that would make me successful with wherever it is that I'm employed as an Arkansan. And so voicing that and the recommendations that we have here, adopting that and just helping us as forward work the plan would be one of the most beneficial things that this organization can do for us.
How do you think Arkansans are going to respond to this report, Sarah? What do you think? How do you think your state board is going to respond to this?
I think we all know we all want best, and we generally agree on the ideas of what to do, but we have to really strengthen each other to get behind that. I think answering your question about what can this room do, we see a lot of partnerships, a lot of really great things across the state between businesses and high schools, providing paid internships, opportunities for students across the board, and then we see that lacking in a lot of places. Looking at the data, out of 100 high school students that graduate, only 14 of those will get a college degree within 6 years, and fewer than that will get a 2-year degree. We are sending a lot of adults out of high school with no plans and no real experience because of our high schools are just focusing on trying to get them out the door and get by. Not to their fault, but that's what happens. So how can we as a business community support those high schools to give opportunities, internships, all sorts of things to students so that they're leaving having exposed to many different things and are better suited to move forward?
So Rotarians would really help out with mentoring goal setting.
Absolutely.
If I'm reading you correctly here.
Absolutely.
See, we tend to think, because we're all involved in our businesses, that, and for many of you have arrived and you have a day-to-day recommendation or demand or responsibility, we don't tend to think of ourselves 18 years old again. But goals are so important, my fellow Rotarians. Ben, what's the big surprise that came out of this?
Yeah, well, I mean, there were a lot of surprises, that came out of this, and we learned a tremendous amount. I think one of the biggest surprises, we showed some of that data about, later school outcomes, and that Sarah just referenced that, we're graduating a lot of kids, but they really are not prepared for opportunities and good opportunities and living wage jobs after school. And that really became clear and evident. And in addition to that, I think, one of the primary goals or outcomes of school, there are many, there are multiple, but one is preparing kids to get those opportunities, right? And as we think about school and education currently, we kind of think about those things separately. We think about reading and math, and then we think about career opportunities and things like that. And really, that was a surprise to me. It was also, kind of a light bulb for me. We need to start to integrate that. That is a central goal. Our approach to preparing kids for career, teaching kids how to read and write and do math, those need to be integrated. Those are the same.
You all, I'm involved with so many literacy projects. There's the Bookshelf Project in Conway. There's the Dolly Parton Imagination Library. Kathy, there's Our Kids Read. Goodwill gives away books at summertime so you can continue reading during the summer. And yet, right there on the board is literacy. We've got all of these organizations working to improve literacy, and yet it's stuck. What's happened?
So I don't know what has happened, only because this is historically, that has been the case for the state of Arkansas. So again, it's not news that in the data that is here, it's 60% of kids do not read on grade level and 40% that do.
Around 38%.
Around 38%.
Third graders, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. For a long time, it had just been 30-70. So 68-32 is a bit of an improvement, 2 percentage points, right? The point I want to make is this has been chronic and historical, and it keeps happening in the state. And this isn't my opinion, this is the data. Mm-hmm. You can go on a website, you can look this up. The question for me is, why are we still allowing our kids not to read on grade level? And we debate the how. And we debate curriculum and, fund different programs and the like. And that's all fine. There's nothing wrong with any of that. But we actually need a focused, strategic strategy that looks at the underlying root cause of what it is that this system is only producing 40% of kids reading on grade level. Because then you can't blame parents. Because 40% is way too many kids to make this a parent-only problem. You can't blame the schools only, right? So the working together and the collaboration is real. But we also need a change in the system to produce kids who can read and do math on grade level. And that's where the conversation needs to begin and end, is at that point. And what do we need to do as a state to get there?
Tell them
and take the courage to make the changes necessary and not tweak at them.
Give them your analogy about the shoes. I quote it all the time, and then you corrected me yesterday on our conference call. I'm misquoting you, but it's a tremendous analogy.
Well, the analogy of, especially when the data was 70-30, is, if you go to a classroom with 10 kids, and that means only 3 kids have shoes, and the other 7 don't. Is that really acceptable? And we all say no, but yet we don't do anything but talk about it for year after year after year after year after year. For me, there were no surprises in this study, but we now need action. And that's the opportunity that this administration has, is to actually take bold action that may be uncomfortable. It may, send us all reeling, and what is decided, it'll all be uncomfortable. But no change is ever comfortable. And this absolutely has to change. And I don't mean to preach that, I just mean to emphasize that we can be here 8 years from now with 60-40 70-30. Why? When we don't have to, when we can take action today to change our tomorrow.
A disruptor of the status quo. Another great term.
But
from
no
you.
one wants to disrupt, right? So you quoted Dr. King earlier. You know, he was a disruptor. When he lived, he was terrorized, he was ostracized, and ultimately lynched. Because no one likes a disruptor. And they're revered in death, but not revered while it's happening. And so what do we need to do now to make this change and recognize that we will be ostracized, terrorized, you're gonna get nasty grams in your email, and all of that's gonna happen. But we have to take some risks towards a different future. Otherwise, we will continue the status quo. Again, the data is perpetual, and we can make that stop.
It is impossible to talk with you and not get fired up. I hope you all are feeling it. Golly, I'm ready to go out of here and keep reading to schools. But my choice, my whole thing is the joy of reading. It's the joy of books, the power of story, in hopes that we can turn on that light. I hope you all are all fired up. Do we have time for questions, or we need to wrap this up? Do what? Two quick questions. Deborah just said, I got 2 questions. Yes.
I'm curious why we haven't heard anything today about a correlation between those children and that population that cannot read as it relates to poverty.
Yeah. Well, we had, there's certainly a lot of that in the report, and we had 10 minutes to review the report. But there's absolutely a correlation there, and the data show it, and the data is in that report that if you're an economically disadvantaged student in the state of Arkansas, which is a great percentage of the state, of students in the state, you're far less likely to be proficient in reading.
Well, and the other piece to that is 70% of the jobs in Arkansas require a high school diploma or less and do not pay a living wage. And if you correlate that with only 40% of kids are reading on grade level, while we have not made that direct correlation scientifically, it ain't that deep to recognize that, again, we are producing low-wage workers in our education system, who then go on to be ALICE, asset limited income constrained, of which over 50% of Arkansans are ALICE families. So again, we are perpetuating something we claim we don't want to keep perpetuating, but yet we're not doing anything to make it different.
So can I just add on to why I asked that question? There was a news report mentioned on one of the stations this weekend about recent studies that reveal how poverty is a stressor in young children, and stress is a non-productive component to learning. Children who are under stress have a more difficult time in their brain learning what they need to get in the classroom. Is that in your report?
That's in there too. Student health and well-being. That's absolutely true, and that's absolutely something that needs to be addressed. Students can't learn when they're under that stress. There's COVID shed light on the stress students were already under, and it also increased it. And so it's something that has to be addressed. Schools need to be better equipped to identify and address those things, but they cannot do that alone. Their core responsibility is teaching and learning. And so it's going to require a broader statewide strategy and other agencies to really play a big role there in helping address those needs in students so that they then can learn.
Guys, we're out of time. I just want to leave you with this. I do an Arkansan of the Day, and last week I honored Derek Noble, who lives in California. He went to school in Central Arkansas, and the first 3 years of his school, he never met with his class because he was meeting with a speech therapist. He had a terrible stutter. And he gets better. He gets into the 6th grade, and his principal recognizes that he's getting better about the stutter. And the principal says to him, I want you to do the announcements at the end of school every day. And Derek says to his principal, Sir, I can't do that. And the principal looks at him and says, "Don't you ever tell me what you can't do." And that's what this report, and that's what this is all about. Looking at Arkansas, pointing the finger and saying, "Don't you ever tell me what you can't do." Today, Derek Noble has written 3 books. He's a consultant on leadership. He's in demand by industries and corporate executives all over the country. The boy who couldn't talk is now talking for a living because his principal took just 5 seconds to say, "Don't you ever tell me what you can't do." Thank you all for enjoying and watching this. It's available on the website, right, Denver? What is it again?
Yeah, the study is available on the website. There's a QR code here. There are copies at the table, but you can access it. Download the full report, a summary on the website, and also there's a website itself that takes you through the results and findings and you know, all of what's in the report.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. You guys are amazing. Thanks for sharing the report with us today and the engaging conversation. As part of our speaker series this year, we are giving gifts to our speakers, and these are books by Little Rock Connected authors that we are giving to each of our speakers. And at the end of the year, we will give a selection of these books to all the area Little Rock School District resource centers and libraries in your name. And so as an appreciation for you being here today, we'll give you yours immediately after. So thank you. Yes, that'll be great. And then I neglected to welcome all you guests. There's an incredible amount of guests. If you're a guest, will you stand up so we can thank you for being here? It's unbelievable. Welcome. So sorry about that, Pam. Please come back and join us. We love having you here. It's great having a full house. Next week, we will have Northeast Arkansas's booming steel country. Don't miss it. And with that, we are adjourned.